Hello, this is John welcoming you to the 1955th edition of the Enfield Talking Newspaper, Dateline, 29th of May 2014. The readers this week are
Joy, Audrey,
and myself, with Cassandra on the controls. The items that we will be reading come from our local newspapers, the Enfield Gazette and Advertiser and the Enfield Independent, and are their copyright. Our title music is Country Rock Polka, composed by Pat Prilly, Fernand Bouillon, Harry Brewer, and performed by Jean-Jacques Perry, and is used with his kind permission. Local stories this week include council election results, European election results, a tragic motorcycle accident, the first fines for spitting, and a murder. We do have some special news items this week. Our annual general meeting provides a chance for our volunteers and listeners to meet. It will take place on Monday the 16th of June at the Park Avenue Disability Centre, 65C Park Avenue, Bush Hill Park, and begins at 7:30 p.m. prompt. Please do come along if you can. Travel costs can be reimbursed if necessary. Enfield Vision will hold its regular forum meeting at the Park Avenue Disability Centre on Monday the 2nd of June from 7 to 9 p.m. The guest speaker will be from Health Watch Enfield, who exist to help improve health services in the borough. They are currently listening to people's views on A&E services, mental health services, and the experience of people with sensory impairment. Representatives from Health Watch will be on hand to help people complete the survey. If you can't get to the Enfield Vision meeting on Monday, or if the tape this week arrives too late, you can find out more by contacting Michel Maloir of Health Watch Enfield for more information about how to complete the survey and give your views. Michel can be contacted on 020 8373 6283. The Care Quality Commission, CQC, is about to undertake an inspection of North Middlesex Hospital. They are inviting members of the public to a pre-inspection listening event to enable people to give their views on services there. The event takes place on Tuesday, the 3rd of July, at Angel Community Centre, Raynham Road, N18 2JF, from 2 to 3:30 p.m. If you are unable to attend the event, you can call the Care Quality Commission to give your views. Their telephone number is 03000 616161. Next week, the 1st to the 7th of June, marks National Volunteers Week. We would like to say a big thank you to all the volunteers associated with the Enfield Talking newspaper who give their time each week to keep our blind and visually impaired neighbours in touch with local news and information. On the subject of volunteering, thank you to Lindsay, who is a new volunteer on our production team. Lindsay is now a guide dog puppy trainer. That sounds a lovely job. And will receive her first puppy next month. We also welcome Joan, Ali and Jean to the production team, who have all joined us after our appeal in the Over 50s Forum newsletter. Now Joy will read the first item of local news.
Friends have paid tribute to a motorcyclist who died after colliding with a milk float. Dozens of bouquets of flowers and heartfelt messages have been tied to posts at the scene of the incident in tribute to Hassan Tougai, 26. Police were called to the junction of Ridge Avenue and York Road in Winchmore Hill at 11:30 p.m. last Tuesday. Mr. Tougai was in a critical condition and taken to the Royal London Hospital by the London Ambulance Service. However, he later died. A moving message from Mr. Tougai's family reads, "We are missing you so much, you will never be forgotten. You are in safe hands. Allah is looking after you now. You are the kindest, sweetest person in the world, and you shouldn't have gone like this at a young age. Love you always with our heart and soul. A floral wreath spelling out has also sits at the roadside on Ridge Avenue. A tribute left by Hussein, his brother, said, "You are my brother and the best friend any man could ask for. We will meet again soon. Until then, rest in peace." Candles also adorn the site where Mr. Tugai died. The driver of the milk float stopped at the scene. No arrests have been made, and police are continuing their investigation.
A man who shot dead a teenager in the car park of an Edmonton housing estate as part of an epidemic of gang warfare has been jailed for a minimum of 27 years. Nat Neil Tesfaye, 21, of Park Road, Bounds Green, was sentenced last Thursday at Kingston Crown Court after he was found guilty of the murder of Mohammed Hussein, who was blasted by a sawed-off shotgun on April the 1st last year. Handing down the sentence, Honorary Recorder of Richmond-upon-Thames, Nicholas Price QC, told Tesfaye, "Gang warfare in London has reached epidemic proportions. I use the word epidemic advisedly, as the violence between rival factions is real, serious, and often deadly." During the course of the trial, it emerged that Tesfaye was a member of the Wood Green mob, but had friends in Dem Afrikaans, a gang which considers Edmonton to be its territory and sees incursions from members of rivals the Get Money gang of EN3 as a cause for alarm. Mr. Hussein, 19, was a known GMG figure, and tensions between the gangs were running high. They were running high that night, as the trial was due to begin a few days later, of 4 members of Africans Associate Negus McLean, who had been stabbed to death 2 years previously. Goodness me. Tesfaye, who was also found guilty of possession of a shotgun with intent to endanger life, will have to serve a minimum of 27 years before he is eligible for parole. Welcoming the sentence, the father of the murdered teenager spoke of the grief he will now live with for the rest of my life. Abdi Hussein told how gang culture has stolen his son from him and the rest of his family. "The last time I saw my son, I could see he was not his own self. It was like he was being controlled by something outside of himself," he said. When Mohammed and his brother and sister were younger, Abdi and their mother sent them from Kenya, where the family of 10 children were living after fleeing the civil war in Somalia, to London, so they could have the chance of a good education. However, when the children were in their teens, Abdi was sent word that his 2 sons had become caught up in London gangs. He came to Britain in a desperate bid to bring his sons back to the family home in Africa, but it was too late. "I wanted to take him home to Africa to protect him," Mr. Hussein added. "Mohammed was a good boy. He was not armed. He was killed in cold blood. That grief will stay with me for the rest of my life." He added he believed that the 27-year-old sentence was appropriate.
3 people have been fined for spitting, marking the first prosecution since Enfield Borough Council banned the disgusting habit. Iqbal Chowdhury, 29, of St James Road, Edmonton, and a Polish gentleman whose name I'm going to have great difficulty in pronouncing, but I believe is David Toszczek, 29, of Winchester Road, Edmonton, both pleaded guilty to the offence and have been fined £90. Tyrone Abenishola, 18, of Volta Close, Edmonton, was found guilty after the case was proved in his absence and ordered to pay a £160 fine, a £20 victim surcharge and £100 costs. Enfield Council's Cabinet Member for the Environment, Councillor Chris Bond, said, "This news demonstrates our commitment to stamping out spitting once and for all. The message is simple. If you spit in Enfield, we'll prosecute you. It is a truly disgusting habit and one that we absolutely will not tolerate in this borough." Enfield Council's Cabinet Member for Finance and Property, Councillor Andrew Stafford, said, "This result is the culmination of years of work. We are not prepared to allow people to drench our pavements with spit, and we will continue to pursue and prosecute people who engage in this disgusting habit. The spitting ban was brought in by Enfield Council on December the 17th, 2013, after a campaign by the Over 50s Forum led to more than 4,000 people signing a petition in favour of the new bylaw. The trio were sentenced at Tottenham magistrates on Thursday, May the 22nd, after being spotted spitting in the street by Enfield Council enforcement officers. It is the first time a council has successfully prosecuted anyone for spitting in more than 20 years.
The post-mortem has begun for Enfield's Conservatives in the wake of their annihilation at the hands of Labour in the borough. With the Tory heartlands of Southgate Green, Chase, Bush Hill Park and Winchmore Hill all witnessing a creeping red onslaught, the future of the Tory party in Enfield looks uncertain. However, an upbeat Michael Lavender, leader of the Conservative group on the council, told the Advertiser that he was not surprised at Labour's sweeping victory in last Thursday's local elections, saying it was inevitable that people would vote against the party in government. Mr Lavender managed to hold on to his Cockfosters seat, despite Labour making inroads in traditional Conservative wards. While he survived, some of his colleagues were less successful, with Planning Committee stalwart Martin Prescott losing out to relative unknown Labour candidate Sarah Doyle in Bush Hill Park. However, Mr Lavender was at pains to point out that the Conservatives in Enfield, as in other parts of the country, had seen the UK Independence Party take a considerable chunk out of its vote. He said, "The Liberal vote collapsed nationally, and many people who once voted Liberal switched to Labour. But for us it was clear in Enfield that although UKIP won no seats, they did manage to eat into our majorities in some areas in the west and north of the borough." The Conservative leader admitted that with many residents in Enfield hit hard by the government's housing benefit and universal credit, which went on trial in the borough last year, more people had what he termed a hard reason to vote Labour. "We were working against a tide of opposition to government cuts," he added. "We are not King Canute. We cannot turn back the tide." However, Deputy Leader of the Labour group, Achilles Georgiou, dismissed Mr Lavender's assertion that UKIP played a part in Labour claiming an increased majority in the borough. "If you look at the figures, the UKIP vote was actually down from 9% in 2010 to 5% this time round," he said. "What that says is that UKIP is not strong in Enfield. We saw that in the European elections too. We have seen that people have turned their backs on the Tories. We now have a mandate from a majority of voters to go forward with a Labour agenda and to implement the Labour manifesto for Enfield," added Mr Georgiou. The annual meeting of the Conservative group will be held next week, and Mr Lavender is waiting for applications for shadow cabinet positions. Enfield's Labour group is also expected to hold an annual meeting soon.
I think this is another slant on what we've just been hearing, but I'll read it anyway. Labour more than doubled the number of Enfield votes it received in the European parliamentary elections, as the party also returned twice as many London MEPs as in 2009. Labour took 4 out of 8 London seats as a result of last Thursday's European elections were finally declared in the early hours of Monday morning. The delay was caused by the high turnout and close results in the elections for the mayor and councillors in Tower Hamlets in East London. The Conservatives lost 1 of their 3 London MEPs, while the UK Independence Party and the Green Party each held on to their 1 parliamentary seat. In Enfield, where turnout was 77,000, or nearly 40%, Labour collected more than 32,000 votes compared to 15,000 in 2009. The results saw the party storm ahead of the Conservatives into first place, with the Tories polling 17,000 votes. UKIP again came in third, increasing its vote from 7,000 to nearly 15,000. The Greens finished in 4th place with more than 5,000 votes, way ahead of the 5th place Liberal Democrats, who saw their support more than halved to just 2,300 votes. Labour's Lucy Anderson, Seb Dance, Mary Honeyball and Claude Moraes were elected as MEPs for London, alongside Tory duo Syed Kamal and Charles Tannock. UKIP's Gerard Batten and Jean Lambert from the Green Party. UKIP topped the poll and nationalists securing 24 MEPs and 28% of the vote, and Labour edged ahead of the Conservatives to finish second. So I hope you understand all those figures.
2 men have been convicted of raping girls they met at the Notting Hill Carnival last year. Shane Wiley, 25, was found guilty of raping 2 teenagers at his home in Auckland Close, Freezywater, and a friend of his, Linvan Jai Singh, 21, was found guilty of raping 1 girl at his home in Stoneleigh Avenue, Enfield Highway, and of perverting the course of justice. Wiley and Jai Singh were convicted following a 3-week trial at Wood Green Crown Court, where jurors heard evidence from 3 teenage victims. The court heard that Wiley had exchanged telephone numbers with a 16-year-old girl he had met at the carnival. A week later, after the girl agreed to meet him, Wiley picked her up and took her back to his house, where she was raped. Afterwards, he drove the girl to Wembley railway station. Wiley stopped to meet Jai Singh along the way and then contacted a 17-year-old girl he had also met at the carnival and made arrangements to join up nearby. She brought along a 16-year-old friend. Soon afterwards, each got into separate cars with the 2 men under the impression they were all going to a house party together. But Wiley drove home instead, and once there he punched the girl in the face before raping her. Jai Singh also drove a teenager to his home, where he locked the door and made sexual advances, which the girl rebuffed, before he raped her. Following the attack, she was able to distract him and take the key to the door and run away. The Metropolitan Police's Sexual Offences, Exploitation and Child Abuse Command launched an investigation after Wiley's first victim had contacted police to say she had been raped. Wiley was arrested and interviewed on September the 5th. He denied all the allegations and said the girl had consented. Jai Singh was identified as a witness as part of the investigation, but he provided a false name and statement. When Wiley's second victim and her friend reported they had been assaulted, both men were arrested and Jai Singh's false statement was uncovered. Wiley was jailed for a total of 14 years on Friday and ordered to sign the sex offenders register for life. Jai Singh was jailed for a total of 8 years and also ordered to sign the register for life. Investigating Officer Detective Constable Dal Riot said, "Both Wiley and Jai Singh are sexual predators who I believe had intentions of having sex with these girls, with or without their consent, as soon as they met. Neither has shown any remorse for their actions, and both have lied repeatedly throughout this process. I would like to pay tribute to the girls, who each showed immense courage and strength of character in coming forward to report their experiences to the police."
A former mayor of Enfield, who organised a march to Edmonton Green in solidarity with more than 200 schoolgirls kidnapped by extremists in Nigeria, has pledged to keep the issue alive in people's minds. Kate Anoloui, who was a ward councillor in Upper Edmonton but did not stand in last week's elections, staged a rally on Saturday in support of the students, who were taken from their school in the northeast of the country by the Boko Haram Islamic militant group last month. The girls are still in captivity, and although the Nigerian government has said it knows where they are being held, it insists that any rescue operation would be too dangerous at this stage. Campaigners have been lobbying the international community to take action, and Mrs. Anoloui, who was born in Nigeria, has told the Advertiser that the treatment of the girls at the hands of the militia group typifies how young women are being denied vital education across the developing world. There is still a problem with girls being undermined, not given equality, and not being allowed to go to school, said the former midwife and trained lawyer. These people, Boko Haram, which means Western education is sinful, believe that girls should get married at the age of 9. Mrs. Anolui does not want the kidnappings to fall off the political radar and is hoping to organise another march in support of the girls and their families through a different part of the borough in the coming weeks. We know that these girls could be subjected to sexual molestation by this group. There could well be unwanted pregnancies, and they are being scarred emotionally, physically and psychologically, she said. This is an urgent and deeply serious ongoing problem. As a passionate supporter of the rights of girls and women across the world to be educated, Mrs. Anolui explained that developing countries would not prosper without equality in education.
Dozens of people were evacuated from a cinema when it was struck by a lightning bolt that caused movie screens to cut out on Thursday. London Fire Brigade was called to Cineworld in Southbury Road, Enfield at 4:45 p.m. when lightning struck the theatre as an electrical storm passed overhead. Fire alarms were set off by the surge, though it remains unclear whether a fire was actually started by the lightning strike. Dozens of moviegoers had sat down to watch the latest X-Men movie, Days of Future Past, when the screens cut out and alarms began to sound. Some movie lovers took to Twitter to express their disbelief at the freak incident. One Twitter user, who goes by the name of the Grace Gatsby, wrote, "All action taking place off-screen today at Cineworld, struck by lightning."
Key witnesses into the death of a 17-year-old man in Palmer's Green have given evidence at the Old Bailey. Joshua Folkes of New Southgate was stabbed to death in Bowes Road in the early hours of December the 3rd, 2013. 3 men, Kreshnik Etemi, 18, of Hill Road, Muswell Hill, Halil Ankai of Glyn Road, Wood Green, and a 17-year-old boy who cannot be named, have all been charged with murder. The trio deny the charge. Last Tuesday, the court heard that the unnamed 17-year-old stabbed Mr. Folkes in the chest after growing animosity between the 2 teenagers. And last Wednesday, key witnesses into the death of Mr. Folkes gave evidence in court. Melissa Flack, who lived next door to the unnamed defendant in Bowes Road, told the court about events that led up to the stabbing of Mr. Folkes at the flat on December the 3rd. She said, "I heard a loud banging from next door. About 5 or 10 minutes passed, and then I heard 3 or 4 voices shouting." Mrs. Flack then saw Mr. Folkes, known as J Money to his friends, lying, apparently dead, on the ground outside the flat. She also described 3 men running from the scene who fitted the description of the 3 defendants. Prosecutor Simon Mayo then asked Mrs. Flack about a friend of Mr. Folkes named Matthew Heardy, or Dutch as he was known, who was also at the scene. Mrs. Flack said, "I knew of him, but didn't know him personally. I saw him from my window with his foot on J Money, Josh Folkes, and he was shouting, 'Come on, J Money, get up, get up.'" When asked by defence barrister Michael Bromley Martin QC about the 3 men running from the scene and their reaction to seeing Mr. Folkes on the floor, Mrs. Flack said, "They looked in shock. It was as if they were saying, 'Oh my God, what has just happened?'" Gary Osborne, who was walking down Palmerston Road in Palmer's Green on the evening of the attack, told the court about 3 men he encountered on his walk. He said, "One man was carrying a green bottle which looked like a beer bottle, and another man was carrying a puffer jacket and a knife that was covered in blood." Mr. Osborne added, "The man carrying the knife also said, What are we going to do with this? It's still wet. It was obvious he was talking about the knife. The case continues.
London Mayor Boris Johnson's office has been ordered to pay compensation claims of more than £74 million for the destruction of the Sony warehouse in Enfield Lock during the London riots. In one of the biggest legal battles following the riots in August 2011, insurance firms for Sony, Mitsui Sumitomo and Tokyo Marine Europe, and the three DVD firms Clear Vision, Lace International and Asphyxiation Films, took the Metropolitan Police to the High Court after their claims for compensation were refused. Under the Riot Damages Act 1886, police authorities are liable for damages caused to property during riots. To claim under the Act, there must be evidence of more than 12 people being riotously and tumultuously assembled. The DVD firms had millions of pounds worth of stock stored at the distribution centre in Solar Way, which was destroyed in an arson attack. Following a 4-day trial in July last year, a judge ruled that both insurers and owners of uninsured property were entitled to compensation from the Mayor's Office for Policing and Crime. They had claimed more than £62.8 million. A claim for loss of profits was refused. The ruling was challenged by Mr Johnson. In upholding that ruling, appeal court judges went further on Tuesday last week and said the Mayor was also liable for consequential losses such as loss of profit and rent. Those figures were put at £11.4 million by the claimants. Lawrence Abramson of Keystone Law, representing the three DVD firms, said, "We are delighted with this ruling. My clients are real owner-managers of businesses who have lives. The damage to their businesses was caused back in 2011, and they really don't want to see another appeal or any more litigation. They just want their compensation." Lawyers acting on behalf of the Mayor's Office for Policing and Crime argued that the disturbances were not covered by the 1886 Act. They could ask the Court of Appeal for permission to appeal to the Supreme Court. A spokeswoman said, "The Mayor's Office for Policing and Crime notes the judgment and is considering potential next steps in the legal process." Mr Abramson added, "An appeal could take another year. We'd rather sit down with the police and try to settle with them if they were interested."
We have now reached the end of side 1 of this tape. Please stop your machine now, take out the cassette, turn it over and start side 2.